came from a very modest background and then revolutionized the industry, as you said. And for those who don't remember, the revolution was this. In the old days, before 74, 75, if you bought a stock, you paid a fixed commission, and everybody paid the same commission around the country. He came up with the idea, after the federal government allowed this to be deregulated, to kind of have very low fees. Now the fees are basically zero for buying stocks. But he's built a company that is now managed about $4 trillion, and it's the leader in brokerage accounts for people all over the United States and all over the world. And he's now 82 years old. He overcame a lot of handicaps. He was dyslexic, didn't know he was dyslexic, was not a good student, never found out until he was much older that he was dyslexic, and that was the reason he wasn't a good student. He almost flunked out of Stanford. He got into Stanford initially because he was a great golfer, and he's still a pretty good golfer. But he built a business that is now legendary, and his face is so well known because the original advertising people said to him, why don't we use your face? He was reluctant to do it, but then it was used and now became so well known that his face is known to everybody, in effect.
So, David, it's interesting. Just recently, Charles Schwab kind of shocked the market yet again by going to zero commissions on a lot of equity transactions. What's the economics behind that? It seems like that's a big hit to their revenue.
Not so much. I mean, I think they were probably getting maybe 4% or so of their revenue from those commissions. How do they afford to do it? Well, they sell funds, and when you sell funds, you charge management fees for those funds. But also, they have enormous amounts of cash reserves by people that keep their funds on account with them, and so they're making interest on it, and sometimes they're not charging that much to the client, or not paying that much to the client. So they have about $4 trillion, and they're earning fees on that, and they're investing that. So that's how they can afford to do it. Really, the brokerage commission business now is relatively modest, and others are also going to zero commission. So it seems like it's a gift, and it is giving away some money, and maybe their stock will go down a little bit because of it. But in truth, they have so many other ways of making money, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, Dave, when I think of retail investing in this country, I think of the thundering herd of Merrill Lynch. I think, of course, Charles Schwab and some other discount brokers. Yet a lot of Americans still are not invested in the market. Does Charles Chuck have a sense of kind of maybe how they can increase participation?
Of course, they want people to buy more stocks. That's why he's talking about fractionalization, more people would buy stocks and so forth. But remember, a lot of people are investing through their 401ks and their IRAs, and also a lot of people have pension funds at their place of employment, and the pension funds are investing in the stock market, and you could argue, in effect, that they're investing on behalf of the future retirees. Clearly, the stock market is a much bigger business than it was in 1974, 75. And the reason was able to pull this off, it wasn't that he was the only person who said, let's have discount fees. He invested heavily in technology, and others were not willing to do that, and he put a lot of his money into technology. He ultimately sold his company after a few years to Bank of America. Bank of America kind of ran it into the ground, and he bought it back, and then he closed on the deal right before the bubble burst in October of 1989, and so his stock went way down, and he was worried whether the company could survive, but actually he came back and, again, invested heavily in technology and became the market leader in this business.
David, thank you. David Rubenstein, peer-to-peer conversations, really quite good with Charles Schwab tonight, 9 p.m. on Bloomberg television. Dow up 80 points, just refuses to go down. It's a Sweeney, great bull market. And now you got it with a great bull dollar, strong dollar.
Exactly. Well. Yeah, look at that DXY index, 99.63. Ken, I don't know the bear case for the dollar. I haven't had any currency strategists come in here and give me a really valid case for the bear case for the dollar.
I've had a lot of bear cases for the dollar. They've just been wrong.
Right, exactly.
Again, some of it's the unexpected as you get here, a huge safe haven move. And we see that in gold as well, 1606. That was up much more 4 or 5 hours ago as well. But all in all, really extraordinary to see where the dollar is. And you wonder if the foreign exchange trader at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue will have something to say about it today. We will see. Kevin Cirilli, no doubt, watching what the president will do. Again, the Dow up 85 points. We are produced by Colin of the Twins. This
You can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Despite never having used them, Alison Peartree was not initially a fan of purple bricks.
Because I heard from my uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker they don't have proper estate agents.
But Alison's uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker was wrong. Purple Bricks have experienced local agents ready to sell your home.
Turns out Martin from Purple Bricks was very knowledgeable. And he didn't charge commission. I've even recommended him to my sister's boyfriend's auntie's hairdresser, Sharon.
Purple Bricks. Book your free valuation today.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
TSB's Fix and Flex loan offers one of the best rates you can get. 2.9% APR representative fixed for up to 5 years. And the freedom to pay more whenever you want. Or even take a break if you like. Because no one can really predict what the future holds. On loans from £7,500 to £25,000. Subject to status, UK residents only, over 21. Based on de facto data, January 2020. Up to 2 repayment holidays a year, subject to approval.
The Mona Lisa is only 30 inches tall. The world's hottest chili? 1 inch. And Napoleon? Taller than a Great Dane, but only by 71 centimetres. Who says small can't make an impact? The Peugeot 108 Allure is now available for just $159 per month, with $159 initial rental. Our small but mighty car that doesn't have to cost you a small fortune. Peugeot Motor Company PLC, a credit broker not a lender, will introduce you to PSA Finance UK Limited. Personal finance lease, 48 months at $159, 18 plus, guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility and return conditions apply. You will not own the car.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, another election story, but this one with a twist.
We need changing, gotta check me a vote. I got LGBT rights and I'm a legalized dope. America's going broke and I ain't gonna sit back. While Creepy Joe looks at little girls like they some snacks.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
On the Bloomberg Business app and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Wednesday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience. Lots of economic data out this morning. We'll parse through it with Constance Hunter, chief economist at KPMG. Plus, we're going to get the latest on the coronavirus and the apparent disconnect with U.S. equity markets. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Well, all stocks are edging up on signs that China may be actually planning further measures to support its economy as it reels from the virus-induced slowdown and after U.S. data points to solid growth. Chris Grisanti Capital tells Bloomberg you still have to consider the coronavirus when investing.
Anybody who tells you how this is going to work out with the virus doesn't know what they're talking about. So what you say is the market being complacent? And
We don't think so, at least not with the data we have yet. We think that we will work our way through the virus sooner rather than later. Again, not certain about that. But I think the smart money is staying in the market and not selling off and going to the sidelines at this point.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.4%, up 13. Dow's up 0.2%, up 58. And the Nasdaq's up 0.7%, up 69. The 10-year's down 2/32. The yield is 1.56%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 1.25% at $52.69 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.2% at $16.0711 per ounce. The dollar yen, 1.1079. The euro is $1.794. The British pound, $1.2961. U.S. new home construction remained robust for the month of January, and applications to build jumped to the highest level since 2007. Low mortgage rates and a solid labor market continue to fuel housing demand. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets is on with Lisa and Paul.
Thank you so much, Greg Jarrett. Right now we are looking at a rally in markets, as Greg was saying. And the interesting thing here is it does not seem like it is coming on the heels of some sort of decisive data about the coronavirus, but rather stimulus from China. And Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us here in our Interactive Broker studios. When you look under the hood, is that really what the price action is telling us?
Well, you've got to find something other than the coronavirus to peg this on. And I say that, we got results out of Analog Devices, a chip maker. They talked about how the coronavirus is going to cut their revenue this quarter by $70 million. They talked about what they're anticipating for the quarter in terms of sales and earnings. The numbers were lower than analysts were expecting, at least the ones we surveyed here at Bloomberg. You put that all together, the stock's up 5.4%. So, clearly people are looking beyond the effects of the coronavirus. We saw it, with other companies earlier this week, and we're seeing it with the Analog Devices today. I mean, it's almost like people are, not really kind of factoring in the worst case scenarios when they look at these companies. They're rather seeing things in a more positive light. And it's interesting about the chip makers too. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, the stocks, is at a record today, and in fact every stock in that index, 30 companies, are all higher. With Analog Devices leading the way. You've also got NVIDIA up more than 4%. Sanford Bernstein coming out with a $360 estimate on the stock, and that's the highest of all the analysts we've surveyed here at Bloomberg. So, that gets your attention too.
So I'm just looking at Tesla again, up 6.6% again today, above $900. What's the latest? Is this just the momentum that we've become accustomed to, I guess?
It sure looks like it, and it's kind of fueled to some extent by what the analysts are saying. You had Piper Sandler come out with a $928 estimate on the stock. That's the highest of the analysts we've surveyed. Tesla's actually traded above that within the past few weeks. And just looking at today, the shares got to $925, so that's not a lot of room to move up.
Yep.
Which is one way of saying what the analysts have been predicting. Well, this company's kind of left behind for a while in terms of their share price. So, it's a matter of what kind of catch-up gets played here as much as anything. Do people figure that the rally that we've seen in the last few months is sustainable? And you can argue, even with Piper's increase, that the short answer is not really, at least based on the projections that we have so far from the street, so to speak.
So what's driving the strength that we're seeing in the stocks and the other, stocks that should be really sensitive to any slowdown over in China?
Best case scenario, perhaps. Another thing, it's funny, I was looking at technology stocks in the S&P 500 earlier. And if you go back to March 2009, when the bull market took off, and you sort of break down, there are three main areas within the S&P 500 technology index: hardware, software, and semiconductors. Well, software kind of leading the way. Relative to the S&P 500, it's more than almost double. So, if you just take the ratio of the industry versus the market, there's been a whole lot of strength there. Less so with the hardware makers, and the chip makers have been bringing up the rear. Of course, their ratio is up more than 50% over the past 11 years as well. So, I mean, there's been strength, just not as much as you're seeing elsewhere. And it may be, I mean, given the optimism that the chip industry is poised for faster growth, that the group's playing a bit of catch-up to its peers.
One stock that is not melting up, it's melting down, is Groupon, down 40% today. What happened there?
Well, simply, a few years ago, they decided to get into the business of selling stuff. Originally, they were all about giving you deals at restaurants. Right.
Yep.
Right? That was the basic
Groupon,
business.
Yep.
Then they moved into what they called Groupon goods. Now they're saying it's not working for us. We're not making any money at it. So we're getting out of Groupon goods and we're going to focus on experiences. I guess that, it starts with the restaurants and builds from there, local spa treatments or whatever they have to offer. But it really then becomes a matter of what kind of business do they have in the end when this major shift in their strategy a few years ago didn't work out. I mean, that's what they're looking at here, not to mention their latest quarterly numbers coming up well short of estimates.
Meanwhile, another stock that's getting my attention is Ally Financial. Shares plunging after saying that they are going to buy CardWorks, which is a subprime credit card lender. And this is such an interesting move because on one hand, Ally Financial has such a big presence in the subprime auto lending sector, so it might make sense to diversify into other types of lending that seem similar but have some broader reach. People are saying, though, this late in the credit cycle to be getting into this is sort of a questionable proposition. Shares of the company dropping at one point more than 9%. It's just sort of interesting to see this late play as we hear from the banks saying, we don't want to get into these really risky loans. We're going to try to pull back, even though we think that the consumer is strong. And then you see this company getting punished for taking a little bit of a plunge. I find it kind of compelling.
Yeah, it's a doubling down, you could argue, I suppose, from that perspective. And then beyond that, I mean, just the price. Some analysts have questioned whether they're paying too much in this deal. Bloomberg Intelligence among them. I mean, they talk about it all being puzzling in part because of the price and, then the other issues you raised. Of course, on the other hand, Ally's saying that this deal is going to add to earnings right away, pretty much after it's completed. So, they're not really getting any credit for that view, you can argue. It's more about, concern about, like you say, the deal's timing as well as the price.
Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, thank you so much for being with us. And other asset classes, if you take a look at credit, you could say that the yield on investment-grade corporate debt right now, lowest on record.
Yep, exactly right. I mean,
2.56% to borrow for an investment-grade company in the United States.
And we've seen good issuance so far this year, but nothing crazy. I mean, I think we had a rush at the end of last year, but I've been interested to see kind of how the issuance is year to date relative to last year. We've seen some big issuers, but I'm not sure we've necessarily seen a flood of issuance.
Look, there's been a question. We've had very low-cost borrowing for a long time.
Yep.
If companies haven't borrowed until now, what do they need to borrow for?
Right.
And this is sort of the key question as we head into the rest of the year when people are expecting perhaps capital expenditure to pick up. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, getting ready for tonight's Democratic presidential debate in Las Vegas. Elizabeth Warren made her pitch to workers in the influential Culinary Union.
The White House is a mess. And when you've got a mess, and you really need it cleaned up, call a woman to get the job done.
Warren may face a difficult job reviving her campaign. Two new national polls out this morning show Bernie Sanders with a double-digit lead. Warren battling Joe Biden and Michael Bloomberg, and in at least one poll, Pete Buttigieg for second place. Greg Valliere with EGF Investments tells Bloomberg News the former New York City mayor will be a target.
Bloomberg is going to be a piñata. I think everyone will attack him on stop and frisk, on his flip-flop on Wall Street.
Bloomberg rolled out several policy proposals to rein in Wall Street yesterday, and we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. First 500 passengers have been allowed to leave that Diamond Princess cruise ship that's been under coronavirus quarantine off the coast of Japan over the last 2 weeks. U.S. Centers for Disease Control says Japan may not have done enough to stop the spread within the ship. 621 people on board have tested positive. Jan Swartz is the president of Princess Cruises.
This is an unprecedented situation. I mean, nobody going on vacation thinks that they're going to be notified in the last days that they've got an extension of 14 days and they're not going to be allowed to leave their cabin.
Diamond Princess has the most coronavirus cases outside China. The death toll has now surpassed 2,000. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Revisions, return policies. There are so many ways to redo a decision.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Do they have any path other than the courts?
Except here, we have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war. Are there winners?
So that you can too.
How does your modeling have to pivot to reflect a different scenario?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman to the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella.
Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday, the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
I am a force for good.
I am a force for courage.
And for calm.
I am a force for safety.
For fairness. For leadership.
I am a force for the future.
For compassion.
For my community.
I am a police officer. And I am a force for all.
Be one of the 20,000 new police officers and be a force for all that you believe in. Search Join the Police.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are edging a bit higher after China launched fresh measures to support local businesses that are struggling because of the coronavirus effect. We check those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.4%, up 14. Dow's up 0.25%, up 70. The Nasdaq's up 0.75%, up 71. The 10-year's little changed with a yield of 1.56%. West Texas Intermediate crude's up 1% at 52.56 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.3% at 16.0840 an ounce. The dollar yen 110.83, the euro $1.787, and the British pound $1.2953. Groupon plummeted to a record 38% to an all-time low after delivering worse than expected results and announcing plans to stop selling goods, a retreat for a company that once aspired to be a major shopping service. Earnings declined to 7 cents a share last quarter, excluding some items. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, we got a batch of economic data this morning confirming that the U.S. consumer remains in very good shape. Strong housing starts the best in a long time, just confirming that once again. Kind of raising the question is, how long can the consumer continue to be so strong in this global economy? To answer that question, we welcome Constance Hunter. She is Chief Economist for KPMG. She joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Constance, it seems like the theme continues to be, while there may be some manufacturing weakness, there may be some weakness in business spending, the U.S. consumer is still there supporting this economy. How confident are you in the U.S. consumer to continue to do so?
So, because we're a services economy, right, and we have strong growth in the services industry, we're continuing to see strong employment growth. And while we expect employment growth to slow this year due to natural population constraints, and we expect consumption to slow slightly. We were at 2.6% last year. When I say slightly, I mean maybe it'll go down to 2.4 or 2.3 because we're not going to see the jobs growth we saw last year. It's still very, very solid. And things like the strong PPI report and firms being able to pass on price increases means they're going to be more inclined to invest. They're going to be more inclined to hire. Some of those price increases might come through in higher wages because we saw the strong housing report, right? Obviously, that is a huge driver for consumer attitudes. And quite honestly, the continued strong equity market has a positive mood effect that helps consumers. So I think the consumer will continue to be the backbone of growth this year. And then it just becomes a question, are the shocks that we see and the confluence of those shocks enough to cause the manufacturing slowdown to spill over into that services part of the economy.
All right, let's break it down, some of the things that you said. You mentioned the PPI data, the U.S. producer prices, which rose more than forecast in January, increasing 1.7% from a year earlier, topping all estimates from Bloomberg economists surveyed. I'm just trying to understand, does this signal that we are seeing some sort of resurgence in inflation, or is this really noisy data that you can kind of discount as perhaps a one-off?
Well, I think it's certainly something to watch. I like to look at several months of data to see what the trend is. There were some one-offs. There is some effect of tariffs in there. There is sort of this one-off increase in apparel retailers being able to increase prices and improve margins. I think that's not something we're going to see happening month over month. So I want to wait and see. But it certainly suggests that we might be getting to a place where there's a little bit more pricing power from companies. And ultimately, if that is what helps companies invest more, because we still see corporate investment way below previous expansions of this length. If we index this to the 1990 expansion, if we index to the other longest expansion in the 60s, right, we aren't seeing investment at the same rate. And it has been slow for about 5 or 6 years compared to those previous expansions. And part of that, I think, has to do with pricing power. It's a number of things, but pricing power is certainly one of them. So if this gets higher investment going, I think that would be very positive.
So industrial production's been sluggish, weaker than maybe expected. How much of that is due to, say, the ripple effect from Boeing versus really just fundamental concern and reticence on the part of executives on that capital spending line?
Right. So Boeing was producing into the end of November. So that weakness from before November was due to other factors. And I think, again, it's how all these things interact. So when we think about the risks, we have to think of how are they interacting with one another. So we have what's happening with the changing trade landscape impacting the ability of the willingness of firms to invest, rethinking supply chains. We have that intersecting with Boeing. We have that intersecting with now coronavirus and how that's changing the landscape in China, and firms that were already saying, maybe I need to reconsider how much of my supply chain is dependent on China or Asia. Maybe let me reconfigure that a little bit. So all these factors intersect with one another. So Boeing, we expect it will take 1% off of GDP in the first half of the year, and again, expect that to bounce back to some extent in the second half if production resumes. But
I don't even know when these planes are going to be flying again, quite frankly. I still haven't heard a good number.
A lot of people don't know, and I think that's what's being embedded into the share prices, although not as much as perhaps you would think. Unfortunately, we don't have all day. I mean, we could speak all day with Constance about the consumer and the state of the American consumer. Because you mentioned the coronavirus, we have to go there. That is the front and center story for markets. Markets right now, people dismissing the disruptions that we're seeing currently as very transitory. We hear a lot about a V-shaped recovery. Do you buy that?
Ordinarily, I would, but here is the issue for China. China is its corporations are very heavily indebted. So it's financial debt to GDP is over 200% of GDP. We just saw today that H&A is going to need to be rescued. Right now, H&A's had problems for a long time. It's one of the most indebted companies.
That's the airline, correct? The airline.
It's a conglomerate that has a lot of industrial companies.
Yes, they own an airline that hasn't been doing well that they're going to try to sell off. And obviously that airline has probably taken the brunt of the recent impact from coronavirus. But my point is that this has shut down corporate China. And while the central bank has come in and said to banks, we'll give you a preferential rate to lend out to struggling companies, all that does is pile more debt on debt. And eventually the piper has to be paid for that. So it really depends on how much longer this goes on, to what extent quarantines and shutdowns are happening, and to what extent the government ends up taking on this bad debt.
Right.
How many banks are impacted. So we saw in Ireland, for example, a country with very stable fiscal situation took on all the bad bank debt. Suddenly it wasn't stable.
Constance Hunter, thank you so much for joining us. Constance is a chief economist for KPMG. We're so happy to have her in a Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio today, giving us her latest thoughts on the U.S. economy. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are edging higher this morning. China may be planning further measures to support parts of its economy reeling from the coronavirus. One of the latest moves to aid growth is said to include possible bailouts for some of its airlines. Meal kit company Blue Apron said it's considering strategic options to rekindle its business. That includes raising capital or selling assets. Blue Apron outlined a plan in August to turn around its fortunes and return to growth. The company said it will focus on selling meal kits to more affluent customers. Cody's trying to sell its professional hair and nail products business. It's a deal that could be worth as much as $8 billion. Bloomberg has learned that some of the world's biggest buyout firms are interested. And a China-based sports marketing and event promoter confirmed it may sell the Ironman triathlon business it bought in 2015. Wanda Sports is said to be looking to fetch about $1 billion after buying it for $650 million. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Do you do the same thing every weekend? You know, meet up with the same friends for brunch, browse around the same shops, eat the same Saturday night takeaway. Mine's a lamb balti with mushroom pilau rice. Snuggle up next to the same person and watch the same brain-numbing reality TV. Then maybe it's time to switch it up. Starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown!
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA/SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Sometimes the simplest method is the best one.
I think even I could figure it out today.
Balance of Power with David Weston.
You had a high estimate. It beat your high estimate.
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up amid the raging coronavirus spread and concerns about how it's being contained or whether it is, the deepening line between the U.S. and China, the decoupling continues. We're going to dig into some of the latest on that. Plus, we're going to take a look at the evolving music industry. Right now, though, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Stocks are edging just a bit higher. Chip makers are leading the S&P's gains after Bloomberg News reported that China's latest moves to aid growth include possible bailouts for coronavirus hard-hit industries. Treasury yields ticked a bit higher, along with the dollar, after data on housing starts and building permits exceeded analyst estimates. Michael Bell, J.P. Morgan Asset Management, tells Bloomberg 2020 is the year for diversification in stocks.
I think this year, either the data's going to pick up, in which case duration will go against you, but equities will move a bit higher, or if coronavirus disrupts the sort of tentative signs of pickup in growth that we're seeing at the moment, then equities could struggle and duration would perform pretty well. So I think that given the inherent uncertainty around the outlook at the moment, a more diversified portfolio makes sense this year compared with last year.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P 500's up 0.5%, up 15. The Dow's up 0.3%, up 81. And the Nasdaq's up 0.8%, up 75. The 10-year, little change. The yield 1.56%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 1.3%, now at $52.73 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.3% to $16.0950 an ounce. The dollar yen 110.93, the euro $1.785, and the British pound $1.29.46. Bank branches are closing at an ever faster rate in the New York area, while more consumers turn to mobile apps for their financial business. The number of branches fell 6.8% in the 12 months through June, compared with 2.2% for the same period last year. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 10:33 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Andy Brown. He's editorial director for economy, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. So we continue to get headlines, Andy, out of China. The coronavirus doesn't seem to be abating at this point, yet U.S. equity markets in particular continue to move higher. So that decoupling, as Lisa characterized it, it seems odd to a lot of observers. What do you make of it?
Look, I don't think the reality has sunk in yet. The poison from coronavirus is in the economy. It hasn't worked its way through yet. It is just starting to come out. And when it comes out, the danger is that you're going to get a panic in the markets.
There's a sense that China has the ammunition and the will to cushion this blow by introducing new stimulus measures and by loosening borrowing requirements. Do you think that will be sufficient?
Well, do they? What we're seeing, for instance, today are reports that the government is going to bail out airlines. Okay, bailing out airlines is a relatively straightforward mechanism. It's been done before. There's lots of precedents. They're all owned by the state. The government dips into its pockets and offers some loans or forgives loans or engineers mergers, acquisitions within the industry. What is far more worrying, and you can't use monetary methods to fix this, is the small and medium-sized enterprise sector of the economy, which is 80% of urban employment, 60% of Chinese GDP. Their problem is they don't have workers. The workers are not coming back from the countryside after the Lunar New Year holiday to staff the production lines. So they're not coming back because of quarantine measures that the government itself, central government as well as local governments around China have put in place. Half of the country still is in some kind of semi-form of lockdown.
So when are we going to see that ripple through the global economy? It seems like everything is made in China. They're a huge consumer of global goods. When do you think we're going to start to see that ripple through maybe economic figures in the West?
Well, it's just starting now. So Apple, for instance, has announced that it's going to have difficulty with its iPhones. Well, 80% of handsets in the world come from China. 50% of PCs. 90% of bicycles and toys. Right. So and we're just so companies I think now are kind of managing. They're running down stockpiles and so on. At some point, the crunch is going to come, and when it comes, it's going to come in a hurry, in a rush.
I'm struggling to understand how we should view the news about the Wall Street Journal reporters, 3 of them, who were expelled from China. It comes after an op-ed was published about the sick man of Asia, and that was viewed as offensive by the Chinese government, and so they were kicked out even though they didn't have anything to do with the article. What is that? How do you frame that in your mind? How do you put this into what's been going on, the broader frame?
Look, this is incredibly disturbing. And full disclosure, I used to be the China editor of the Wall Street Journal. So these 3 reporters are being kicked out, not for anything that they have written, but for group punishment because of this op-ed that you mentioned, and particularly the headline of that op-ed, which talked about the sick man of Asia. Now, it's perfectly possible to think that headline was insensitive, potentially racist. It's possible to think that, but also to think that the Chinese government has made a terrible mistake and have set an appalling precedent.
So that kind of goes to the issue of what's the feeling within China, the populace there, the Chinese people, as it relates to their government, how their government is handling this crisis?
Well, this relates to the first question about how you get the economy back on its feet. A lot of it is going to be down to social solidarity and trust. Can people trust the statistics that the government is putting out? So, right now the Chinese government faces this monumental dilemma. They've declared a people's war on this virus, and that war, there are signs that some signs that the tide of war is turning, but the war is by no means over, and yet they need to get people, the economy back to avoid a different type of disaster, which is an economic disaster on top of this health disaster, right? And so much of it is going to depend on, can the people trust the government? Their botched approach in the early days of this virus, when they, for instance, silenced this Dr. Li Wenliang, doesn't give the general public cause for a great deal of confidence.
Andy Brown, thank you so much for being with us and for the insight. Andy Brown is editorial director for Bloomberg New Economy, giving some insight into the situation. A lot of questions, a lot of moving parts. World Health Organizations have come out and they have said that the quarantining of the entire Hubei province has bought the rest of the world a couple of weeks to prepare themselves for the onslaught. And, still a big question, will we see a pandemic? Still a lot of questions. The more I read about it, the more I am left sort of wondering what we actually know.
Exactly, and what we don't know.
Correct. Right now, let's head down to 99 Studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Haggard there with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, thanks. The Democratic campaign is in full swing in Nevada.
I'm absolutely certain we're going to defeat Donald Trump.
He is a pre-existing condition we've got to take care of.
My name is Elizabeth Warren, and I'm the woman who's going to beat Donald Trump.
Tonight, those candidates and three more will face each other in the next debate. As Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports, a pair of polls put Bernie Sanders in a commanding lead.
The latest NBC Wall Street Journal national poll shows Sanders with 27% support, Joe Biden at 15%, Michael Bloomberg and Elizabeth Warren at 14%, Pete Buttigieg at 13%, and Amy Klobuchar at 7% support. Now that's similar to the latest ABC News Washington Post poll, which shows Sanders with 32% support. And we should note that Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
While the Democrats debate in Las Vegas, President Trump will be in Phoenix tonight, looking to rally support in a state that had been reliably Republican.
A lot of people think Arizona could go blue in 2020 at the national level. Maybe not quite yet, but certainly very competitive. Republicans are going to have to spend money there the way that they never had before.
It's Brown University political science chair Wendy Schiller. Arizona's population is up nearly 5% since 2016. Some estimates suggest racial minorities will be the majority in the state by 2030. The White House is now pushing back. It reports Attorney General William Barr might resign over presidential tweets and pressure from former Justice Department officials. A White House aide just said President Trump and Barr have a good working relationship. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone.
If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
The Mona Lisa is only 30 inches tall. The world's hottest chili? 1 inch. And Napoleon? Taller than a Great Dane, but only by 71 centimetres. Who says small can't make an impact? The Peugeot 108 Allure